from Simulations Plus. This is the Feature of the Week video about Monolix Suite. Today, we're exploring the data formatting module. The standard dataset format in Monolix Suite applications is similar to the typical data format used in population PK/PD analysis with a few specific rules. If your data file doesn't meet these criteria, you can easily transform it to the compatible format using the data formatting module, which is available in Monolix and in PKanalix starting from the 2023 version. This module allows you to specify formatting rules directly in the graphical interface, ensuring quality control and reproducibility. These rules are saved in a human-readable format within the project file and are applied on the fly on the project reload. The original dataset stays unmodified. You can also automate data formatting with presets, but this is a topic for another video. In today's video, I will show you how to use the data formatting module with step-by-step examples. As always, for more information, check out our online documentation and YouTube channel. And to stay updated with the latest news about Monolix Suite, follow us on LinkedIn. So let's start with a quick reminder about the Monolix Suite dataset format. You can load text, CSV, Excel or SAS files directly in Monolix or PKanalix. Compatibility with Excel and SAS are a new feature in 2024 version. Dataset can have only one header row. If you have several types of observations, such as PK and PD, all measurements should be in the same column, with each type identified by a separate observation ID column. Censoring column indicates BLQ measurements. The LLOQ values are directly in the observation column. How we handle them in the calculation, for example in NCA, can be set later. Strings in the observation column are not allowed. All doses for all individuals must be included in the dataset with dose amount in one column, infusion rate or duration in another column. In addition, we distinguish several types of doses, such as oral and IV, or different drugs using an additional administration ID column. And finally, occasions to distinguish different profiles within the same individual must be integers, so here column OC and not column thread. There are other rules, but these ones are the most important. Now, if your dataset does not follow this format, you can transform it in a few steps directly in PKanalix and Monolix using the data formatting module. It is a straightforward process. You load the original data file in PKanalix or Monolix. You define rules within the main tabs: initialization, observations, treatments, and additional columns. Once finished, you can preview the new formatted data and then continue by tagging the remaining columns. So let's take a look at this workflow directly in the graphical interface. I'm going to use PKanalix, but this module is the same in Monolix. So I start a new project and I load a dataset with the Format Data option. The initialization step is mandatory and must be completed first. Here we select which rows indicate the header and which rows to exclude. I'm going to exclude a second line here. We also need to tag two mandatory columns, ID and time. For urine data, instead of time, we can select start time, end time, and volume column. If there are occasions, we can use the sort tag. Next, in the observation tab, we can merge several observation columns. We can create an observation ID column to distinguish different observation types, or we can define occasions for multiple observation types. In addition, we can format here also censoring information. The treatment tab is available only if we select an observation type in this tab here. Here in the Treatment tab, we can add doses, either specifying manually time of a dose and dose amount, or using information from data column, or using an external file. In the Additional Columns section, we can append columns to a dataset from an external file. Currently, only one value per ID is allowed, meaning these values must be constant in time. But this is perfect for adding covariates, constant exposure metrics, or PK parameters from a previous study. This last option, adding PK parameters to a dataset, is explained already in a previous feature of the week. The Preview button shows the formatted dataset in the usual Data tab, where we can continue tagging other columns. We go back to the formatting with the button back here, and when everything is ready, we click on Accept. For quality control, the original data file is never modified. If you want to save the formatted dataset, you can do it from the top menu under Export, Export Formatted Data. Alright, we've covered the basics of the data formatting workflow in Monolix Suite. Now let's make it concrete with some real examples. In the next part of the video, I will walk you through the formatting process step by step using specific datasets. Let's get to it and start with our first example. This dataset contains parent and metabolite measurements with observations in separate columns. In addition, there are two header rows. So to format it to the standard Monolix Suite format, I have to first remove the unit row and then merge the two concentration columns together. I would also need to add those lines, but I will show this in another example. So let's format it step by step. First, I load the dataset via Format Data. At the initialization step, I have a choice. I can merge the first two rows into a single header by selecting second header line. The result is presented in this line. Or I can remove one of the headers, for example, the second one, and keep only the first one. Moving on to observations, I want to now combine the parent and metabolite measurements into one observation column. So first, I add an observation type and select parent column. Then I repeat the same for metabolite. On the right-hand side, we have different settings, and I'm going to keep a default option how to distinguish observation types with observation ID. It is particularly useful for compartmental analysis with a joint model for the parent and metabolite. Using occasions, which is the second option, would be suitable for an NCA to analyze the parent and the metabolite profile separately. Merging observations into one column creates new lines, but I can duplicate the information from other columns on both lines. Let's click on Preview and see how the dataset is formatted. Here it includes two additional columns, one observation, which contains combined measurements for parent and metabolite, and another column tagged as observation ID with different tags that corresponds to headers from my original dataset that allows to distinguish between different observation types. Now I could click on Accept and continue with the analysis. In the next example, let's see how to format censored information. The observation column here contains two different strings representing BLQ measurements, 0.01 for study with 400 mg and 0.2 for study with 800 mg. I need to replace these strings with numeric values that will correspond to the LLOQ values. And I also need to create a column tagged as censored that will flag these rows with BLQ measurements. I have already loaded and initialized the dataset. In the Observation tab, I'm going to add a new observation type, As I have strings in this column, they are automatically detected and listed here. So to format the censoring information, that is, replace the strings with the numerical values, I first add censoring and select from here the first string. I write the value manually. For the second string, I add additional censoring. This string is automatically detected and I write the value here. Let's click on the preview to see what happened. I have here a new censoring column with 1 for each line where the string was detected and replaced with the number. Instead of manually specifying the LOQ values, I can read them directly from the data. For instance, if I select here from data and the concentration column, and here both strings, the results of the formatted dataset will be the same as in the previous case. Moreover, if I need different LOQ values across different groups, such as here for multiple studies, I can use the option by category, which is under manual selection. Here I select study column and I can specify LLOQ value for each study group. Next, let's look at how to format treatments. I'm going to use the same dataset as in the previous example. As you can see, it does not contain those lines yet. Remember that it is mandatory to specify the observations before treatment. This is what I had from the previous example. I go to Treatments tab. First, I will add a single dose with the amount 400 at time t0 for all individuals. So I create a new treatment, use a manual method, and specify time of a dose and dose amount. Let's preview the formatted dataset to see the changes. There is a new column with dose amount and one dose line per individual. For multiple doses administered regularly, it is more efficient to use the regular schedule instead of manual. Here I can specify the start time of a treatment, interdose interval, number of doses, and dose amount. I can also create several treatments by adding a new treatment here and combine them in my formatted dataset. Here below, we can also add the infusion duration or rate in the same manner by giving manual value or reading the value from the data. And I can also specify administration ID to distinguish different administration types, for example, oral and infusion, or different drugs. Similarly to LLOQ values, I can read dose amount from the data instead of writing them manually. For instance, if I use from data and select study column here, PKanalix is going to extract for each dose amount the numerical value from the string in the study column. Now if I click on preview, we can see that the dose amount is 400 extracted from the string and 500 extracted from this one. The next example contains occasions. The dataset has PK measurements for 2 formulations from a crossover study. These measurements should be treated as separate periods. I also need to add doses for each formulation. And if I want to define different absorption models for each formulation, I will need to distinguish them with an administration identifier. So let's see how to do that with data formatting. This dataset includes a column form with entries test and ref to distinguish the 2 sets of observations. However, these are strings, so this column cannot be used as an occasion column in PKanalix or Monolix. To resolve this, I need another column with the same information but using integers. And this can be done with data formatting if I specify this column as sort. If I click on next and preview, we see that I have additional column tagged automatically as occasion with value 1 for reference formulation and 2 for test formulation. Now in the observation column, I'm going to add observation type, and I can add treatments for these two occasions. So I add new treatment, specify manually time of a dose and dose amount. I'm going to use different models for administration of test and reference formulation, so I have to distinguish these doses between test and ref. To do that, I need administration ID column, and I can specify the administration ID by category using form column. Here 1 will correspond to reference formulation and 2 corresponds to test formulation. If I click on preview, we see a new column with administration ID that can be mapped directly in the structural model. In the last example, I will show you how to work in PKanalix and Monolix on data that is in separate files. For this, I'm going to use an Excel file with data split in 3 sheets. The first one contains concentration measurements. The second records time and dose amounts. And the third, covariates. Remember that the list of individuals must be the same in all sheets or in all separate external files that you are going to use. Okay, so as usual, I load this dataset with data formatting. PKanalix recognizes the file structure and selects the first sheet by default. In the observation tab, I add a new observation type with DV column. Now I want to read treatment from the second sheet of my Excel file. So I add a new treatment and use external method. Here I select the same file. Dose information is in the doses sheet. Finally, in the additional columns tab, I'm going to add covariates. So I select the same file and pick covariates sheet. Column headers are listed here. Let's preview the formatted dataset. Here, information is combined in one dataset. So I have observation, I have covariates, and dose amount. The same way, we can add information from separate files as well, not only from separate sheets in Excel file. These and more examples are described in our online documentation. If you have any comments or feedback about the data formatting module, do not hesitate to send it to us with the feedback form in PKanalix and Monolix. Thank you for listening and have a good week.